Coming up next, a Regency romp with George and Emma. I think his name's George.
Yeah, it's George.
Okay, John is his brother.
That's right.
A good character who rightfully perhaps is always kind of cut out of or downplayed from the movies, but quite a fun character.
Yeah.
And a good reflection on Mr. Knightley himself, Mr. George Knightley. You learn a little something about the Knightley family from spending some time with John Knightley. Well, here we are again, gentlemen. It's Valentine's Day to all you ladies out there listening. Happy Valentine's Day. It's not actually Valentine's Day, but when we're recording this, but maybe it's Valentine's Day when you're listening. Maybe you knew that the thing to make your day as romantic as possible was to listen to three gentlemen quickly approaching middle age talking about a Jane Austen novel.
We may be middle-aged, right?
Are we middle? Yeah, probably. I mean, assuming we all die at 50, we're well above it. So, yeah, here we are. It's the Bookening. We're talking about Emma by Jane Austen, one of my favorite novels. It's possible I have offspring that may or may not have the name Emma, and it may or may not be for the reason that I enjoy this novel so darn much. Maybe it's because I'm hoping some guy in his late 20s will fall in love with my little girl when she turns 13 and form her character such that she pleases him by the time she's 21, and then they'll get married. Probably not, though.
As one can only hope.
8 years of grooming.
8 years of grooming. The alternate title. Fun fact, Jane Austen thought about First Impressions was the name for Pride and Prejudice. So this novel was originally called 8 Years of Grooming, but she thought...
It's like 8 years in Tibet or whatever that was.
Yeah, 7 years in Tibet, 8 years of grooming. What are the other great time period names?
I don't know.
Love in the Time of Cholera.
Yeah.
We don't know how long he was. I mean, we do if we read the novel.
21 years a slave or whatever.
21 Years a Slave.
There
Yeah.
you go.
What else? Surely there's others.
Oh, there's got to be others.
1 year at Mariband. Isn't there something about Mariband and the time spent there? I don't even know what Mariband is. His title is just occurring to me.
Julian Barnes has one, right? The History of the World and something. Let's see here.
We'll find out.
The History of the World in 10.5 chapters. It's not really one, sorry. That was disappointing.
Well, folks, get ready for some saucy hot takes. We already said the phrase 8 years of grooming in our Emma review, so that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. Hey, I like this book. I think we all like this book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we love this book. Is it unfair to say we all love this book?
No.
So maybe we'll have a little fun with it. We've already recorded.
Did Jake just say it's not fair to say we all love it?
No.
No, he said it is fair to say we all
It is
love
fair
it.
to say we all love it.
And you would agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
I take it. Yeah, I think there's a good argument to be made. This is Jane Austen's best. We've had the conversation before, and everybody kind of agrees, well, Pride and Prejudice has just planted the flag in the public imagination, and what are you going to do? It's got oodles of plot, and you just can't really argue with it. But this might be, it's superior in some respects, at least. I would say Mr. Knightley is a superior characterization to Mr. Darcy, for one thing. And maybe that's the only thing where you could make a fairly definitive argument. But yeah, Emma, it's a book by Jane Austen.
It's one that we have here in front of us.
Now, what will you guys be doing for your ladies this Valentine's Day?
It's before Christmas.
When we're recording this?
Yeah. And I have not a thought.
Not a well.
I'm worried about Christmas right now.
Old Jake, not much of a romantic, is he, Brandon?
No.
I'm going to get Amanda a lump of coal for Valentine's Day, maybe.
Yep.
She'll finally be able to keep herself warm. It'll be a good present.
Yeah.
She's been asking for it. They're very poor. She was like, please, Jake, may I have a lump of coal? He's like, let your icicles melt. Let your icicles melt. That doesn't make any sense. Let your pen ink be icy.
And your stake of holly, what's that in your heart?
Yeah, and your stake of is just
Hock of holly.
Hock of holly.
and your hock of holly.
Hock of holly in your heart. Hock of holly in your heart.
Brandon likes to hit
Holly
the
in the
old
hearts.
hock of holly sometimes.
That's funny. Hock of holly.
Was it?
No.
Welcome to the Bookening, everybody. We're off and running.
I want somebody someday to do like, you know how they've taken that Ian Malcolm laugh, you know, when Nathan does his over the top exaggerated laugh, they've taken like that Ian Malcolm laugh and turned it into like songs and things like that.
Yeah.
Auto-tuned it.
You want somebody to do a Nathan's Laugh remix?
Yeah, I think that would be super fun.
Do I have an exaggerated laugh?
What you just did?
I've never done that in my life. That was new.
Waka waka.
No, you do that. You do that one quite a bit. That wasn't new.
I think our listeners were experiencing the thrill of invention.
No.
False.
I do that all the time.
Yes.
Oh, all the time.
Yep.
Ha ha.
Yeah.
Like, do it again. Do what I do. So I'm a witch. Am I boiling like kittens and stuff like that?
You are.
You also go
but that's
high with it.
That's completely unrelated, though.
I have a high-pitched normal laugh. Like when I think something's funny, sometimes I'll go, I don't say something funny.
I mean, we don't need a...
I'll do like that kind of thing, I guess. But I was not aware that I had an Ian Malcolm. Ha ha!
No, you do. And sometimes you go super high with it when you're done. No, it turns into sort of like a little squeal. Hey, we don't want to examine any of our laughs here too much.
No, I don't.
Nobody likes their laugh being examined, but it is.
That's what he's going to do.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that nobody likes their laugh examined. I think Jake's afraid we're going to examine his laugh.
I am. Yeah.
Let's examine Jake's laugh now.
Under the microscope.
Please don't.
What's weird about Jake's laugh? Jake doesn't have anything to ashamed of. To ashamed of?
No.
Jake's got a nice laugh.
Yeah.
It's very pleasant.
Aww.
I like laughing with Jake. I do it
Jake's
all the
got a
time.
I like laughing
Great
with
laugh.
all of you guys.
It's fun to laugh with
That's
you guys.
why we're here.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
I don't pay attention. I mean, there's some people that have very distinctive laughs. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but
Your wife.
my wife. But yes, that's
Yes, your wife
that's who
does
I'm.
have a
Yes,
distinct-
almost made me not marry her. It's horrifying. No, it reminds me of my aunt. Let's call her Beatrice, and she was not a beloved aunt. She was a Jane Austen bad guy.
Like Mrs. Norris.
She was a Norrisian. Not exactly, but Jane Austen would have had a field day writing about my aunt, and I guarantee you she would have ended up in Jane Austen's novels. She was that kind of oppressive woman that Jane Austen likes to take down. There's very little chance that my aunt is listening to this podcast right now, so I do not mind talking about her, although I will not say her name. But if you're listening and you're thinking, was it me?
The answer is definitely not.
No, it wasn't you.
No.
It was the other one.
Unless you happen to be this aunt that is listening randomly for the first time.
Right.
Then it is you.
Yeah. But if you're the one that I liked, then
It's not you.
that's fine.
And that's probably who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just say it. The one that I liked was the pastor, actually.
There you go. Well, now you know. Now you know it's not you.
Don't think she should have been a pastor, but she was nice and creative and fun.
Yeah.
And the kind of person that would be a pastor in whatever corny denomination she was part of.
You speak of her in the past tense.
Yeah. Well,
Is she gone?
who can say?
Who can say?
There's nothing in my trunk. I'll tell you that much.
Uh,
How about your closet? How about in the crawl space of your house?
There's definitely nothing in my
crawl space?
my.
Because you don't have a crawl space.
I don't have a crawl space.
You kind of have a crawl space.
I got a crawl space. Yeah.
Where?
It's like half of the house is over crawl space, the other half is basement.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. These are the things people tune in to learn about. I did not murder my aunt. She is not in my closet. I have no
Or
skeletons.
crawl space.
I have metaphorical skeletons, perhaps, but I have no literal skeletons in my closet. I'm not Brandon. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I got literal skeleton.
Yeah, Brandon is a avid collector of lemur skeletons,
He's got them dangling like puppets all around my house.
dangling like puppets all across Brandon's house. He likes to catch a lemur. He likes to skin it. He likes to make it talk.
Bleach it, and then we hang it up in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can't walk through without the bones rattling like death's wind chimes.
Yes. Well, that was your point. That was always your dream, to have lemur bones rattle like death's wind chimes.
That's right.
And you finally
You achieved it.
I
you
achieved it.
You
Had
live
to-
in the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Brandon.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, you're welcome.
I accept the.
We always
Praise.
knew you could do it. I'm not sure if I can even picture a lemur. Do they have long snouts?
I don't think they have long snouts.
Are they kind of...
Oh yeah, you can. Madagascar. Those things are.
That guy's a lemur. Okay.
Yeah.
Ray Romano is a lemur.
Ray Romano's.
No, Ray Romano's like a tiger. I've never seen a Madagascar movie.
It's those little things.
Ray Romano's Ice Age. I'm sorry. That guy. Okay,
That guy
so
right
it's kind of like a deformed raccoon kind of thing.
Yeah, like a raccoon and a cat had a baby.
Like a raccoon and a cat had a baby.
Yeah.
And that's an abomination that Brandon can't stand, so he skins them and he fills his house with their bones and they They rattle.
A little bit of koala in there, maybe too.
Yeah.
Even more of a disgrace.
A disgrace. This particular animal is a disgrace. Aww.
Okay.
No, that's not awe. That's terrifying.
I was peer pressured into awing. Brandon was awing, so I thought I'd awe too.
They don't have. They
I
have
awe
this.
at anything that I want to kill.
They have this like
Oh no.
persistently vacant expression that is kind of horrifying. Like you can't find them. Their eyes are always. It's like they don't have eyelids
Right.
to give them any expression. So,
Right. It's like podcasting with Brandon.
Yeah, it's like his eyes are just wide and always staring at you like some kind of
Like a doll's eyes.
like a doll's eyes. Yes, exactly. What's that from?
That's from Jaws.
Oh,
Glassy
yeah.
orbs where my eyes should be. You can't see in them.
Yeah, let's go on.
I don't know.
You just got glassy orbs where your eyes should be.
Yeah, just a blank expression.
The blank expression.
Yeah.
And if anyone says the word lemur, you go into a kill state.
I do.
It's like a little bit of Catcher in the Rye there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all the serial killers carry it around with them.
Yeah, I got it in my back pocket right now.
Well, speaking of rye,
Rye.
Jane Austen had a wry wit.
She
And
did.
Speaking of serial killers, she did not serialize her novels.
Nope.
But she did have killer insights.
She
into
didn't
human
even
nature.
allow the publisher to buy this one off her. She published it herself and then gave him like a little on the side.
Why did the publisher deserve anything?
Because he helped her publish it.
Okay.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to let herself be held back by the patriarchy,
Yeah, that's right.
just like Emma.
Just like Emma.
Well, not really, though.
She was held back by the patriarchy. She was groomed by the patriarchy.
Groomed by the patriarchy.
She was made.
And then she kind of half-heartedly stood up to the patriarchy, and then the patriarchy was like, nah, you like it. And she was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I do.
Mm.
She was created in the lab of Knightley's Edwardian chivalric something or other lab.
Yeah. She was created in a lab of Knightley's Edwardian chivalric lab. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess we're going to have a serious conversation about the age discrepancy because it's clearly on our mind. And I'll tell you why, folks, because we talked about this novel 6 or 7 years ago. I always forget which. Was it 6? No, it would have been 7 because there's 7 Jane Austen novels, right? Or no?
We would have just been 30.
Yeah, this is the first time where we're actually Knightley's age or older. I think the first time I read this novel, I was probably Emma's age or younger, and she was my figure of identification. Last time when we read it together, we were all kind of somewhere in between, and now we are thoroughly Knightley's age.
Yeah.
And so that does make a difference.
We are Knightley. How old is he in this book?
He's
He's
39.
Yeah.
So we're not quite
I
there.
turned 39 in February.
Oh, there you go.
Right,
He is the Knightley of this podcast.
right. And so all you have to do is think of someone who you know who's 21, and you can be like, oh, that's what this novel's talking about. And that just makes it a little more visceral,
Mm-hmm.
the old age discrepancy.
I've known you since you were a child, and I fell in love with you when you were 13.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say, how many people in Jane Austen novels get married, because it's more than one that gets married when they're like 16, 15, 16, something like that. So falling in love when you're with someone when they're 13 is like our equivalent of falling in love with when you're 16, let's say. It's a little different.
Sure.
I was just hoping you guys wouldn't push back and would just silently judge me, and our listeners could assume you wholeheartedly agreed.
It also hits because I have a 13-year-old daughter,
Right.
Yeah.
and I have the equivalent would be, what's the 28-year-old man
Mm-hmm.
in our church
You're like, hey, what if that guy was...
in love with my daughter and trying to shape her and form her character into somebody that he could marry over the next 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
That-
buddy,
That'd be weird. You'd want to shoot him.
That's some
yeah, you can just go die.
Dumbledore level creepy crud right
Mhm.
there.
Dumbledore level.
Yeah, he's just always behind the scenes manipulating things for
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like Dumbledore is Knightley in this
Like
case.
Severus Snape had a reason to be mad at Dumbledore for
By the end.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we all had a reason to be mad with
just manipulating
Dumbledore
things,
sucks.
guy. There probably was some pent up resentment behind that Avada Kedavra from Snape, actually.
I suspect so.
Yeah. I say good.
He
Deserves it.
Yeah.
Yep. Dumb.
Best headmaster there ever was. Snape. He got to be headmaster for like 2 days. Hey, we're not supposed to be talking about Harry Potter.
No, we're supposed to be talking about the age discrepancy and making everybody feel queasy about a novel that's great fun and
That we all love.
We do love it.
Well, here's the thing, guys. We're all really comfortable with this topic. And the reason we're really comfortable with this topic is because if we know there's like aggro, incel kind of guys listening, and it is our goal to make sure that they have full permission to
Start grooming 13-year-old girls.
start grooming 13-year-old girls. Yeah.
Yeah, get right at
Like
it.
my daughter, please.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah.
Become a youth group leader or
This is the Warhorn School for Groomers.
the
Grooming.
WHSFG.
Yeah.
Got a great acronym. That's what we're saying. No, that's not actually what we're saying. That was a little bit of sarcasm. Look, I think we can just deal with this issue very simply at the outset of this podcast and then not deal with it anymore. The reason that this discussion is complicated is because we try and think of analogies, or we don't try, we do think of analogies to our lives. And there is, no matter who you are, no matter what the situation is, there is just simply nothing analogous. There is no 28-year-old guy listening right now that has a situation that's analogous to the situation in this novel where he needs to be having any kind of relationship that's anywhere like Knightley and Emma. It's just like,
Yep. No.
this is like a novel about an alien civilization or something like that. It is so far and so remote.
Yeah, there are just no analogs.
And so what is the situation? Well, it's an extremely limited group of people.
It was a social world where everybody matured at a much faster rate and were expected to mature at a much faster rate and was set up to afford those opportunities and compel people to mature at a much faster rate, and where women were expected to not only mature, but then to marry fairly young, still in their teen years, and where men were expected to go out and make their fortune and establish themselves and then get married to the best available young lady in her teens or early 20s. And early 20s was often too late. Like, you just, who's available, who's eligible, who's matured enough. That was it. And you had so much smaller communities and social circles that you were moving in. It's not like 28 or 35 or 38-year-old George Knightley could hop on the internet and go to Singles or Christian Mingle or whatever. It's not like he lived in a highly populated area. It's not like he had a car where he could travel and go places with great convenience. And so, and the class roles and distinctions were also very strictly observed. And that's a big part of what we also see happening in any Austen novel. So just like the pool of eligible people for either of these two, for either Emma or Knightley, it's very, 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 very small.
And so in the way the novel's set up, they're kind of made for each other. They kind of know it, but don't want to admit it. Everybody else kind of knows it. Mrs. What's-Her-Face, Emma's old governess, knows it. I mean, if you want a biblical analog, then like so many of Jane Austen's stories, this one reflects the story of Ruth and Boaz, where Boaz calls her my daughter for most of the story. He's an established
Older man. And there's more of a parental kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's even acknowledged, even to the point where Boaz, Ruth essentially proposes or invites or asks Boaz to propose to her, where Boaz looks at her and says, it's really sweet. You could have gone after
Frank Churchill.
Yeah, all the Frank Churchills of the world. There are so many young, eligible men that would have been happy to marry you, that you could have gone after, and you chose me. And I'm kind of an old man. I'm kind of an old bachelor. But you went after the right person, the redeemer, the kinsman redeemer of your family. It's a kindness to Naomi. There's all these other things that make that Ruth Boaz story alien
Mm-hmm.
and not analogous to our romances today.
Right. But Emma actually has a lot that's alien about it. A lot that's actually closer to that than to this. Not that any of them are perfectly analogous.
Right.
And so if you're listening to this and you're a guy and you think, I just need to find the right 13, A, you're not Knightley. B, she's not Emma. You're probably just a creeper who's too weak to actually find someone and attract someone your own age. And so you want to find somebody who's young and stupid enough to
be manipulated by you.
Whereas in the logic of this story, George Knightley, whatever you want to say about the fact that he improves her character, Emma's got it made. She's got a lot of natural advantages.
And she's not even in the position in terms of Ruth and Boaz where she has anything to be desperate about.
Right.
Right. I mean, if she were, you could see this feeling a little different.
Right. And when Jane Austen wrote that story, Pride and Prejudice, she aged down Darcy just enough. I think he's probably in his early 30s, if I'm remembering correctly, and Elizabeth's 18, and nobody's bothered by that story. Maybe he's even in his late 20s. I don't know.
Well, even then, they were introduced when they were introduced.
Right.
Right. And that also makes a difference into how we think about that story or this story. The Darcy who shows up and is attracted by 18 or 19-year-old Elizabeth is not the same as the Knightley who waited 8 years from age 13 to 21 for Emma to grow and mature and silently, secretly loved her without much of a hope in his mind of it actually working out.
Right.
But loved her enough to also be interested in her and jealous for her character to be formed well.
Right. And loved her with enough chastity that the novel's not embarrassed about it, but also loved her with enough kick to it that the novel's having some fun with it. Darcy's jealous, or not, Knightley's jealous. The one chapter we get from Knightley's point of view has him jealous without quite knowing that that's what he is. He's mad at Frank Churchill, and he has all these character reasons why he's mad at Frank Churchill, but we as the reader know why he's actually mad, because
he's jealous.
Frank's moving in on his territory.
Yeah.
So it's just
young, dashing man. Dash him.
Yeah, he wanted to make your brains dashing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Is there anything else to say about that? No.
I think you guys got it.
All right.
Well done.
Thanks.
Well, goodly done.
Goodly done.
Thanks.
All right, that's the podcast. Bye.
All right. Thanks.
Frailty.
Frailty, thy name is Brandon.
There it is. There it is.
Hey.
Yeah.
It's the context.
Woo.
Guns.
Context guns.
Remember when I used to be good at doing my own shtick?
Yeah, remember when I used to be good at doing context?
No.
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh.
No, Brandon, you were always good at doing
That
context.
hurts.
Yeah, but Nathan's never been good at doing his own
That
shtick.
hurts. I'm leaving.
Nathan makes a new shtick each episode.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's okay. That's his shtick.
Speak softly
That's
and
what
carry
he-
a big shtick. That's what I always say. Have I said? I'm sure I've said that before.
I'm sure you have, yeah.
Are there any other stick-related famous puns that we could stick shtick into?
Stick 'em up.
Frailty, thy name is Brandon.
You know you liked it, Nathan.
No, I did. It was goodly done. All right, Brandon. You are the contextual Texan.
Yeah,
you hail from Texas.
I
You provide
do.
much needed context on the works that we discuss.
Yeah, sure.
And you're about to do that regarding?
Yeah, this is one of those that we've now done how many times?
Oh, I don't
Twice.
know.
This is the second time. Oh, the context for
Yeah.
just Jane Austen.
Yeah.
This might be the.
This is number 9,
Yeah, wow.
right? Because she has 7.
Uh-huh.
Well, I said that earlier, but is that true? Let's see. So it's Sense, it's Pride, it's Emma. It might just be 6. It's Mansfield, it's Persuasion, and it's Northanger. That's 6. And I don't.
It's
and I
the
think
Juvenalia.
and then it's like the stupid lady
So 6.
Susan and
so
crap.
7. So this is the 8th time.
Yeah.
The 8th time we've done this. And so with Shakespeare, I believe I kind of made you guys participate by trying to give you a quiz that you refused to do. So let's try it with this.
All right. When things don't work, it's a
When
sign
they
of
don't work,
sanity and
go
mental health.
back. Because this is a plug for people. We do appreciate our patrons and would love to see some more patrons.
Yeah.
You get a wonderful book.
Mm-hmm.
Supports these wonderful guys.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, actually, it has a wonderful chronology in it.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
And so instead of
You going to try and make me and Jake say dates?
instead of pulling out my notes, I can just use this and then kind of
Bad dates.
remember
What movie is
the
that
rest
from?
there.
Nobody knows.
I think everybody knows.
What?
Yeah, that's the joke.
What was
You
the
asked
joke?
what it was. And
What joke? What
Bad
was it?
dates. What movie is that from?
Oh, yeah.
we can't say it out loud.
No, we won't. If you figure out what movie that is and you're the first to email it to please don't bother me at yahoo.com, then we will send
Never
you.
know because
It's my favorite
we don't
movies
have
growing up.
That's true.
access
clue.
to that account.
It's one of
And-
Brandon's favorite movies
And
growing
I think
up.
it was the inspiration for wanting to become a professor at first.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Of course, why wouldn't it be?
yeah.
Striptease with
And
Demi Moore. I think
yeah,
that was your favorite movie
Yeah,
growing up.
that's right.
She goes on a bunch of bad
And
dates.
hang on. I think I'm having a realization about myself.
Yeah.
I think that, I get to do these things. I get to do some teaching occasionally, but I feel like part of the reason that I've gotten into caving with surveying and stuff like that with cave exploration is because I feel like I can bring the desire to be that character full circle.
You just need a fedora and a whip.
Yeah. So I get to have some adventure. I get to have some books.
Mm-hmm.
Life couldn't be any better.
Girls in your class are always closing their eyes because they've painted "Love You" on their eyelids
All the time.
all the time. At least one or two a day.
Yeah, I mean, there are no girls. I teach a class at the pastor's college, so it's the pastor's students that are doing it. So
Yeah, that's
You
weird.
creepy and weird.
yeah, I might need to bring that to the
Probably
attention
might
of
need
the
to
board.
disqualify.
Yeah,
those
you really
guys.
don't want a pastor who's painting on his eyelids "Love You" for a class with Brandon or any class, really.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, I'll even go so far as to say it's super weird.
super
Beyond
weird.
kind of
I'll say it's galactically weird.
Yeah, oh man, you beat me there.
out of this world.
It's out of this
It's out of
world
this
weirdness,
world.
dude.
That's a deep, or not a deep cut, but an old cut. The Bookening. We have fun. All right, Brandon. So we have to guess. Ask us some questions. I bet we can do this one.
When was the date of Emma's publication?
Oh, brother. 17 something.
No.
18 something.
Yeah,
for
18
sure.
Very early 18?
Yeah.
1808.
Well, not that early.
1834.
Earlier than that.
See? 1815.
Exactly. Wow. 1815.
I knew it all along.
And for some reason, like this person and other people that I've read, but I can't. So we might want to tease it out. I don't know why we wanted to tease this out actually at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple things. One, what political events were shaking the world at the time?
The War of 1812.
Yeah, the War of Eight. Well, yeah, in America, and then also who else was Britain fighting? So it wasn't just
France.
Yeah, so you had Napoleon. What famous battle happened that same
Waterloo.
Yeah, Waterloo. I think he's looking. He's cheating.
I'm not.
Oh. So Waterloo happened then, and that means that this book, I don't know if she was imagining it taking place in 1815, but it would have been taking place at the same time War and Peace was taking place. Historically speaking, which is kind of interesting. I never put those two things together before.
That's interesting.
But yeah, all the events of War and Peace were happening around the same time as most of her novels, at least. So
I feel like this is one of the novels that has the least of any sort of entry of the outside world or larger political context. Mansfield Park has some slavery talk, and occasionally the soldiers, you kind of get a picture of them. But
yeah, I'm curious as to, so this person here mentioned it, so I was browsing their introduction. The completion of Emma, hang on, I gotta get my glasses on, I'm becoming an old man. I am knightly in my old age, right?
mm-hmm.
The completion of Emma and the Year of Waterloo has encouraged the discernment of political meanings in the novel. Those are interesting word choice.
Yeah,
Encouraged the discernment. And again, the names have seemed significant to many readers. The obvious association between George Knightley and Englishness has led to the opposing equation of Frank Churchill and Frenchness. No, Emma, you amiable young man. Your amiable young man can be amiable only in French, not in English.
Is amiable the pronunciation? Do people pronounce it amiable?
Amiable's how I pronounce it.
I've always said it amiable.
Well, you know what? The world's full of
Frailty, thy name is
the
Brandon.
world's full of color and life. People say things different ways. You say tomato, I say tomato. You say amiable, I say amiable.
One of my favorite SNL skits of all time was when Christopher Walken hosted and they had him sing that song.
Yeah.
But the joke was he was just reading it off the teleprompter. So he just said, you say tomato, I say tomato.
Yeah, it was
You
pretty funny.
say potato, I say
say potato,
tomato, tomato, potato, potato.
And it is weird, like Christopher Walken dancing in voice.
I cannot do a Walken at all. But yeah, it was great.
He's funny.
He is funny.
He had some of the better skits.
Yes, he did. One of the greatest hosts of all time.
Yeah, I agree with that. He and
Alec Baldwin.
sure, yeah,
Steve Martin.
Alec Baldwin, Steve Martin, both great.
Mm-hmm. Where were we?
Yeah. So
The author was saying
Churchill is
you can
French.
discern political meanings.
She's saying, well, she kind of disagrees on the next paragraph. Though you can read these significances into the names, they also hint that such readings are as absurd as the behavior that is gently being ridiculed in the novel itself. Huh. Well, I like that.
Good for you. Because
Who is that? That seems to be good. Who is this person? I like them. Claire Lamont. She's emeritus professor of English Romantic Literature at Newcastle University. She seems to have a sort of realistic view of what we can and can't read in. Because if this was like some of the professors I had at IU, they would be all over this. Like, let's read the political subtext. Because even though Austen might not understand the political or sexual subtexts to the novel, all that matters is that we can read them and see the cultural identifiers that are within the piece.
Oh, my goodness.
And you're like, good grief.
At a certain point, it just becomes...
Isn't it Fiona Stafford?
It is Fiona Stafford, yeah. She's the one who wrote that. I did not think to look at the end of the introduction. I just looked at the Claire Lamont. There's Fiona Stafford. She's professor of English language and literature. Ooh, more important.
Where?
University of Oxford.
Hey.
So she's a bigger deal.
She's a big deal.
Her recent books include Local Attachments, Reading Romantic Poetry, and an edition of Wordsworth and Coleridge's lyrical ballads. By recent, they mean 2013. Okay.
She's also edited Emma, a casebook of criticism and Pride and Prejudice, and is the author of Brief Lives, Jane Austen.
It must be a series on brief lives.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, like it's not about people that died young. It's about, yeah, I'm dumb. It's like, here's a brief life.
I'm
It's like-
dumb too. Then I assumed it was about people who died young.
Brief
Like maybe
lives.
Brief Lives. Flannery
Janis
O'Connor.
Joplin. Yeah. I don't know. I assume it's just briefly told lives. You know, like the Oxford has a whole series
Yeah.
of little, like the
Very
Oxford
short introduction.
I'm
Short
guessing you're right, but still the irony is there that she also had a brief life.
Yeah.
And you're briefly briefly summarizing a brief life.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's even briefer than the other brief lives.
Probably one of the briefest. I mean, 42 is pretty young, although wasn't that young back then. All the ladies got married at 12 years old, just like we think every woman should.
We don't know just a whole lot about her.
Yeah.
We know it through one of her nephews wrote that book on her.
Austen Lays.
Yeah, and people can go back.
Memoir of
I forget which
Jane
episode it was that I read that beforehand, and we basically used that as the context.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go back to that.
Yep.
We can reference people back to old episodes. Right? We
Sure.
don't have to reiterate everything.
We got a big catalog. I
got a big
encourage
catalog.
people to take advantage of it.
Yep. Oh, right. When was she
How
born?
many episodes have we done?
I don't know. I think we may have missed an anniversary not too long ago.
Oh, I'm sure we did.
I've done a bad job of keeping track of the anniversaries of late.
I'm sure we did.
Although we've slowed way down because we're not doing 52 a year anymore.
It's true.
Oh, you know what? We haven't missed it. The Spirits did it all in one night.
What is it?
The episode we are recording right now, gentlemen, is our 296th episode,
Wow.
which means Anna Karenina will constitute our 297th and 298th episode.
Oh, no. It should have been our 300th.
Well, I'll tell you, it'll be interesting.
Is this Bookening Alien? Bookening Alarian?
I don't think we'll ever know what it was, which means, oh no, we may have to do something about this. Not that it's a bad book, but Go Tell It on the Mountain will be our 299th book episode, and then Right Ho Jeeves will be our 300th episode.
I think we should just do a 300th episode.
Bash.
Like, yeah, we have some fun.
Yeah, we could rank something.
Yeah.
Or a ranking. Should we just, you know what? You know what I think we should do?
What?
What do you think about this, Jake? What if we did the exact same thing here that we did that we're doing on Sanity at the Movies? For our 300th episode, let's all rank every book we've ever done.
Sure.
And then see what emerges from the collated data to be. I mean, we know, we kind of know.
We know what the top three are.
We know the top three, but maybe it'll just be boring. But it'll probably be fun. I could see some things sneaking on there. Brandon will be doing this privately, so he can make, he can rank something higher than the rest of us would. All right.
I'll be doing this privately. What do you mean?
I mean, we will each make our own list, and then we will collate the data. So,
yeah. I mean,
you could do it in public if you want.
War and Peace, number one.
Right. Well, yeah, I know what's going to win, but because me and Jake have a united front.
Yep.
I'm going to go for it too.
Really?
Yeah.
You reading it right now?
Yeah. It's better.
Yeah.
It's just better.
But
yeah, how deep are you in?
War and Peace is this close to being just as good.
How deep into it are you?
Huh? I just restarted it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten past Kitty and well, I just got past Kitty and Levin's.
But I'm just mean
disaster.
from the very beginning with
Yep.
the oh man, what are their names?
Stephen Arkadovich and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Steppen, however you say it.
Steppen.
Yeah. Dolly.
Debbie.
Just that whole
Yeah.
everything's just
Yeah,
amazing.
just the way that guy's just
It carries you so
dialogue.
quickly through so many things and on such a I'm right around in our version I'm like around page 180 or something like that.
Yeah.
So we've already gotten through like adultery is happening. Stepan Arkadievich has gone to visit Levin in the country and let him know that Kitty's sick and
Okay.
isn't getting married. And
So
Levin's been really angry about the sale of property and really passive aggressive about it. And
Yep.
meanwhile, Vronsky's about ready to tank all his time. Actually, I'm up to the horse.
Yeah.
He's about to have
I
a
was
horse
just wondering
race.
if the horse has happened yet. I
So-
couldn't remember whether that
so
happened
he's
before
like-
or after the consummation.
Yeah, it happens after. It's basically the next time we cut from the consummation to Levin, and then we cut back, and it's sort of like a brewing scandal.
Mhm.
Like his mom is like past the point of this is not the kind of thing that makes a young man. This is the kind of thing that breaks him, and all that stuff is sort of happening. And like he's loved by the regiment, but he's passed a promotion to stay close to Anna, and everything's getting ready to break.
Right.
And now we're moving to the horse race, and he's with his buddy.
So you're a good distance into the book.
But that's only page 175 for 180. Like
That book moves
all that
fast.
stuff happens way faster than I remembered it happening.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I always had if I was to peg the horse race, that'd be near the halfway mark.
That's what I would have thought too. But that's all in the
I think
first
it's just
200
because it
pages.
feels like a halfway point.
Mhm.
But that's just the beauty of the book. Like there's so much in it, and it is such a good story that moves at such a good pace.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it is so good. It's incomparable.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but there's less of the idiosyncratic than there is in War and Peace, and I just don't need too many essays on the nature of war and
History and memory.
And I mean, it's all interesting, and Tolstoy just can't help but be compelling even when he's being boring. But Anna Kay, what a book. But we can't talk about that. We got to talk about Emma,
Which is also a book.
which is also a book, also a great one. Where were we, Brandon?
Where were we? Oh, published at the same time. Oh, in the same era as War and Peace would have been taking place.
Oh, man. Okay.
And somehow we got here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and so also so we have that cultural context that's happening in the War and Peace. That's just kind of fun, and the war is taking place, and apparently there may or may not be some connection to the names. But I think it's more interesting to note that, like this person was saying, that Jane Austen, she seems to write these stories that are both very much Edwardian, or not, Georgian England,
Right.
and yet at the same time kind of timeless. Like they seem to not really take place anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They take place in this universal England.
Right.
Mhm.
Like that all these other places, like I guess the show Bridgerton is now the big new thing.
Yeah.
But they all try to, they try to adopt some of that. And this novel in particular apparently has even more locale than some of her other books, like The Hill that they go to when they have that failed adventure out into the woods.
Like the badly done, or no, that's the pre-badly done.
And that's where they all end up breaking into parties and like they can't make things congeal and stay together. That's an actual place. And so because of the miles they travel and the other places, people know fairly well where this book was probably set in England more than other novels. But even then, there's this sort of generality, like almost a made-upness to her England that is just convenient for the location. Like, location's convenient for the story she wants to tell.
Right.
So it has the general flavor of what England would have been like, but it has, she's not dependent on accurate geography. Right? The town here is made up.
Right.
Right. And so, I thought that, and so I think that's whoever wrote that essay, whatever her name was, Fiona Apple or something like that.
Yeah.
Wrote some great songs
Exactly
too.
right.
Yeah.
Fiona Stafford.
Yeah, I think that what she's saying is pretty spot on. That maybe there are, but they're more coincidental, or maybe they're a winking nod at the fact that sure, yeah, these things are influencing the story, but at the same time, it's funny that you care.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean?
Would Jane Austen herself have felt an existential threat from Napoleon during this time? I mean, you always read books set in France and set in Germany and stuff about the Napoleonic Wars, and you're like, yeah, these people, like, they're talking about it. It's on their mind. They feel, obviously. But you don't read books, or at least I haven't read books set in England where it's really a big deal. Does their across the pondness sort of allow them to
Be insulated.
be insulated?
I mean, I think that, yeah, sure. There would have been some of her country, what would you call it? Country nobility, country manor life that she had, where it wouldn't have had a significant effect. But I'm sure also she would have been hearing the stories of what was happening. And her brothers were in the military. And so it would have been closer to home than we realized. It'd be interesting. Do you have a volume of her letters?
Maybe.
That's something I
mean,
don't, for some reason, have in my library. I should. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you were to scour some of those. You could probably find mentions of the war.
Yeah, maybe some
Or
of
you
it.
just find it.
I have read her letters before. What strikes me is that they are very similar, but more acidic. Actually, they're meaner. That they're about it. They're on par with the meanest stuff you'll find in her novels. Just her caricaturing her neighbors and her friends and people that she knows. And the other thing that stuck with me is that she has a weird, or perhaps not weird, I don't know how to categorize it or how it compares to other people from her time, but she's interested in death and the process of dying. When someone dies, she asks, like, what did the corpse look like? Did they have a calm expression on their face? And when her father dies, she describes, it's a reoccurring kind of motif. And maybe people were just closer to death than death happened in their homes instead of out of it. And so they just were more plain spoken about it and more sort of just, hey, here's an interesting thing. This person had a grimace when we put him in the ground. But it was just something very striking. And then the third thing that's striking is that she loves her characters, knows her characters, and can give you details about what
Happened next.
what Elizabeth Darcy is up to right now. Yeah. How many kids she has, that sort of thing. So there seems to be a whole Austen cinematic universe that she kept in her head.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as mentions of, it seems like she's about what you'd expect. She's very domestic. She's very, like her novels, she's focused on the here and now of her life.
Yeah, and apparently, I mean, in the letters that she wrote, she does have some references to wars and things that are happening. But I don't know if it was in the sense that it was some heavy weight that was, you get the idea that the Romantics would have cared more.
Right. Yeah.
She was concerned enough with, it's kind of like Flannery O'Connor. I mean, Flannery O'Connor and Jane Austen are pretty close analogs, just in the lives they led.
Right.
Kind of quiet, isolated with their mother out in the middle of the country, and very much concerned with the almost otherworldly observations they can make of other people.
Yeah. Although the big difference is Flannery O'Connor's like, gee, I wonder what it would be like if my family was all drug into the woods and shot by a maniac. Whereas Jane Austen is, in a way that almost annoys certain people, it's like she refuses to write about anything that's not firsthand experience of hers. Like she will not follow her characters into the bedroom. I mean, obviously, I don't mean sex scene wise. I just mean like she will not follow them past marriage because she's not been married herself. And so she's like, I do not know what Darcy and Elizabeth talked about after they got married and how their relationship changed.
Darcy.
Yeah.
My
yeah. Well, the movie makers thought that they could improve upon that. And
guess what? That's the worst part.
they were wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, cheekbones. Although I feel like both of you guys have come around and decided that that movie is good. And maybe I
don't remember what I think, Dave.
I don't think it's good, but I don't think it's as bad as all that.
I don't remember thinking it. Yeah. But anyways, to get back to this. Sorry. Get us back
Pull your
on
microphone
track.
a little closer, Brandon.
Let's get us back on track, Nathan.
Yeah,
okay?
back on track.
What was it? I don't know how to get back on track. Where was the track? What were we saying?
I think we need to lay some track and then send the train down it.
Yeah, we were laying track, but I think as far as we had made it was that War and Peace happened at the same
Right,
time.
1815.
Yeah. Oh, and then I side railed myself and then got side railed again. We were reading some of her letters. Did they know about the war?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, she talked about the war, but it wasn't this heavy weight,
Right.
because she was more concerned about the people around her than the significance of war, political events.
Mhm.
Didn't really concern her.
Right.
All right. I thought it would be fun to this is something I wanted to do later, but let's just do it now. So this book was published in 1815, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So, yeah, I wasn't actually looking for affirmation, but thank you.
Hey, I like validating you, Brandon.
Thanks. Let's see. So Percy Shelley was publishing some of his poetry, and so was Lord Byron and William Wordsworth. So we were in the height of what would be called the Romantic era of literature, and I want to come back to that later, because off mic we were having some conversations as to why do these novels seem, I mean, like you said, she doesn't follow her characters after they get married, but there also seems to be a lack of like overt sexual charge to these books.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's there, it's under the surface, but like even
What's the opposite of overt? There's a lot of
subvert.
covert.
Subtext and sexual tension.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These books are sexually charged,
but
especially
even
this one, I'd say. But
like even the movies have to find ways to get it in there in ways that it isn't.
right, they'll always have the characters
Like,
kiss when they.
or he's coming out of a pond, or they're meeting each other in the rain, right? So they have to find ways to visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't feel that need. It's almost like everybody kind of knows it's there. Like everybody in a Dickens novel, everybody knows that they all take baths and use the bathroom, but he never has to talk about how it's
Right.
done, right? While the Romantics were all about it. They're like, let's just be bohemian and push the
Have it all out
tell
there,
everybody,
baby.
because it's so edgy to tell everybody everything they already know, right?
Hey, it's all part of the human experience, which means it's all grist for the artist, Brandon.
Yeah, let's just rub our noses in what everybody knows is true, but nobody really feels like is necessary to point out.
How did the hobbits go to the bathroom? We don't know.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is a stupid book.
Yeah. How did they have little hobbit babies?
We don't know.
Yeah.
Asexual reproduction, I'm guessing.
And Sam's thoughts of Rosie seem a little bit too pure. Can't we like edge it up a bit? Anyways, in 1813, Pride and Prejudice was published. Mansfield Park was published in 1814. So this was her third book,
Well, didn't Sense come first?
apparently. Oh, Sense and Sensibility. This was her fourth book. Thank you. That was in 1811. I didn't go quite back far enough. Yeah, so in the 1800s, especially the 18 teens, really is dominated by the Romantics.
Mm-hmm.
You also have Walter Scott writing in there, and he's one that gives an opinion on this book. I actually think it's the one that opens up the introduction of this novel. This version that we have. Yeah, he says Walter Scott found the book to have even less story than Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice, but nevertheless admired the author's knowledge of the world and the peculiar tact with which she presents characters that the reader cannot fail to recognize. So, Sir Walter Scott, despite not being a very good novelist himself, knew one when he saw one.
Yep.
Is that a hot take?
That he's not a good novelist?
Yeah. Does anybody like Ivanhoe?
I like the story. Like, I've enjoyed watching movies of Ivanhoe, but reading it is a sludge.
Yeah. I didn't know if there's somebody out there that was like a big Ivanhoe fan.
Oh, we're getting 1 star, but we were going to do that.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I've tried, that's one of those books that I've tried like 3 times
Same.
to read, and I just do not like it.
Sir Walter Rott is what I call him.
Yeah, and so over in America, you had his analog with old Fenimore Cooper writing as well at this time.
Famously bad author.
Yeah,
Mark Twain
though
is.
a really hilarious Mark Twain essay.
Yeah, Mark Twain has forever
Everybody should read that
pegged
one.
him.
Okay, so we're in the full swing of both like the pop reimagining of the Middle Ages and adventure stories with Fenimore Cooper and Walter Scott, and also the pushing the envelope with the Romantics.
Yeah, and the Gothic, all the Anne Radcliffe
Yeah, and the
kind of
Gothic.
stuff.
So E.T.A. Hoffman was writing
Sure,
at the time, and he would have definitely been a Gothic writer, right?
sure. Tales of Hoffman is a famous
And
work
then,
of the supernatural.
Probably the biggest thing that would have happened in literature in the 18 teens would have been Frankenstein. 1818, so 3 years after Emma. It's just really bizarre. Every time we do Jane Austen, it boggles my mind that she was writing at the same time.
She really feels like she's from a different world.
Yeah, she's writing at the same time as
Mary Shelley.
And as Jane Eyre. When does Jane Eyre come out? I'm sure it's on here. Where is it?
We've made this comparison before.
It was a little bit later.
1847. So Jane Eyre is a good, not quite 50, but several decades later.
Quite a bit later.
Yeah.
That'd have been in the swing of Dickens right there.
Yeah.
But in Dumas.
Yeah, your Dickens
Man,
and your
that
Brontes. And
Dumas, he was prolific.
yes, he was.
Good grief.
Well, he famously employed an army of ghostwriters, and so he would just basically outline the novels.
He was like the John Grisham of the 1800s.
Yeah, or Patterson, I think, does that now.
Is it Patterson? I didn't know which one it was.
I mean, I think a lot of them do it. But
Patterson's the one I was thinking of.
These days, it'll be like a Tom Clancy novel. And then in little print, it'll be like written with Jake Menzel, and that means Jake Menzel just wrote it, but Tom Clancy put his name on it.
But Jake Menzel's a ghostwriter for John Clancy?
Yeah, I meant that example, not metaphorically.
For many people.
Interesting.
Yes.
Not allowed to talk about it, though. I mean, so allegedly.
Allegedly.
My friends can allege it. But
Allegedly.
I'm sorry, I let the cat out of the bag.
Meow.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
So that's kind of fun to put her in context with literary history. So you had the Romantics in full swing. It wouldn't be too much later that you would have Dickens, but she's not as 1700s as we think. She was born in 1775, year of our independence. She famously
We call that 1776 around here. Yeah.
Sorry,
We were just gearing up for it, though.
we were gearing up for it.
It's like in my favorite movie, Mel Gibson's.
What country are you from?
Yeah,
It ain't the great state of or great country of Texas either.
No, because we were like squarely Mexican by at that point.
Can we just take a moment to remember the moment
The
that I always
Alamo?
like to remember? In The Patriot by the great Mel Gibson classic, Heath Ledger plays his son. He comes up to the hot girl and he's like, "Can I sit here?" And then she says, "It's a free country, or it will be."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Even more fun is, since we're talking about ghostwriters, Jane Austen wrote the
Why
Independence Day
be
speech from
ruled by
Independence
one
Day.
tyrant 1,000 miles away than? Why is it better to be ruled by one tyrant 1,000 miles away than 1,000 tyrants 1 mile away?
Who said that?
It's a Mel Gibson line from that same movie, The Patriot.
Oh, that's just the most quotable movie ever.
Yeah. But you were saying Jane Austen wrote the Independence Day speech?
Yeah, from the Independence Day movie.
It's a good speech.
Yeah, she's great.
We will not go silently into that. I think Dylan Thomas wrote that speech. We're going to go on.
Rage,
We're going to survive.
against the dying of the light.
You know who quotes that Dylan Thomas poem is
Who?
Michael Caine in Interstellar. They use it like
he sure does.
14 times.
That might, another hot take.
Do you know
That
whose
might be an
name
overrated
is
poem.
not Dylan, but
Yeah.
stole his name from Dylan Thomas?
Bob Dylan.
Yeah. Also known as
Robert Zimmerman.
Robert Zimmerman.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as we're making tangential connections and doing
Let's
word
go back.
associations.
Let's talk about.
talking about World War III blues.
Let's talk.
That's a Bob Dylan song.
Let's.
You can be in my dream if I can be in yours.
Well, you know whose dream you can't be in?
Bob Dylan said that.
Jane Austen's, because she's dead. Let's go back and talk about her. What?
Jane Austen's not dead.
She lives on.
She lives on.
She's gonna
to
survive.
Today is our Independence Day. She lives on in her work.
She sure does.
Oh, come on. That was pretty good.
That was a great
You
one.
have to act like you have a sense of humor about that.
Ah.
Great. Now try acting with talent. All right. Academy Award goes to Brandon.
Thank you. So she was born in 1775. Guess what this has on the chronology in 1776? The American Declaration of Independence.
Hey,
Why? I don't know.
because it puts it in perspective.
1778, Francis Burney published Evelina.
Brendan weighs 1,778 pounds
Thank
also
you.
tangentially related.
in one of his
Are you
thighs.
guys going to watch You guys gonna watch The Whale? You heard of this movie?
Oh, yeah, the Brendan Chastain story starring Brendan Fraser.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I just realized that's a Darren Aronofsky film.
Yeah.
It seems like a joke movie.
Yeah, it looks like a piece of crap. I don't know.
I've been watching a Darren Aronofsky documentary piecemeal.
Which one?
Limitless.
The what?
It's called Limitless.
Oh.
It's not good.
He's a weird guy. So she was born in 1775. Her dad was a reverend.
Mm-hmm. I could have said that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, where was their rectory located?
Oh, we spent a whole episode looking this place up. Eastonbury Blurg.
Really close. Steventon.
Okay.
In Hampshire.
I was right there.
The family was
True or false? Being the contextual Texan has gotten a lot easier over time and a lot more enjoyable.
True.
Oh, good.
Yeah, true.
Is it true?
That's true.
Exasperated Brandon. Is
Remember when I did
flavors.
my first
Contextual Texan?
contextual
segment?
Texan was on Jane Austen, and you told me I had 5 sentences to do it.
That's right. And then you took 15,
Yeah,
but
and the rest was history
it's
because
still a very short.
it was short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Relative to what it's become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This probably would be short if it weren't for all the
Yeah.
tangents we go on.
Almost as short as the amount of time it takes for the scale to break when you step on it.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Nate.
Folks, Brandon's lost so much weight.
He's now the size of only one elephant.
Right.
Only one elephant.
Yeah. I, don't know. I wasn't going to say anything like that.
So their family, we've talked about this before. Her family would have been pretty much like all the families she writes about.
Mhm.
Well connected, had some money, but they weren't super rich.
Right.
And I mean, her brothers would go off and have some success. I think, well, right here it says 2 of her brothers entered the Navy and rose to the rank of Rear Admiral. And we've talked plenty about her home life. They were a literary family. They were a lively family. They enjoyed putting on plays as children. So that goes to, is it Mansfield Park, right? So there's some poking fun at her own family history there because that's such a central part of that novel is putting on the play that's taking place. But it's during this period that she would start writing some of her early work that got published, not by her, but posthumously. Juvenilia, I've never read any of it. Have you?
Nice crap.
Well, this could be expected. Juvenilia. Right.
Turns out if somebody didn't want to publish something, then it's
maybe
good.
it's for the best. I
Yeah.
mean, say one of us becomes famous. Would you want what's
Nope.
you wrote when you were 15 published?
No.
Never.
Yeah, I'd want it to be burnt.
I would barely want the thing that made me famous to be published,
I know.
let alone any things that came before it.
Yep. So she attended school too. I don't think we've ever talked about this or even looked it up. She went to school with her sister Cassandra at the Abbey School in Reading. It's interesting.
That is interesting.
Anyways, so she also, it's just all this time period, everything's so compressed. So you had the Romantics, then you would have, so Dickens was born in 1812, you'd have the birth of Victorian literature, all that stuff. She was right on the cusp of all that. The French Revolution was taking place at the same time. The birth of feminism was taking place in the 1790s with Mary Wollstonecraft's book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. And her daughter was going to be the one that wrote Frankenstein. And so it's just really interesting how small this world was and how it all kind of takes place at the same time.
Well, if I remember correctly, Vindication in the Rights of Women was written in response to either, I want to say Rousseau. So
Yeah.
it's like all these cultural grenades are being thrown and the whole world is changing.
Yeah, and so you have that. But then also in the literary landscape, Anne Radcliffe, who you had mentioned with Gothics. So she wrote the mystery. Well, you tell me what she wrote.
Mystery of Udolpho.
Udolpho.
I cannot pronounce it. Udolpho.
Have you ever read it?
I've tried. It's long, flowery descriptions and cheese ball. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah, and
Entertaining,
so
but bad.
that would contain elements. I mean, it's pop literature, and that contains some elements of the illicit, right? And then so with the Romantics, with what they wrote. And so here she comes, and this is the literary landscape that she's in, the cultural landscape that she's in. And she kind of has a unique voice, a unique genre.
She just does her own thing.
Yeah, there's not really anybody that's kind of writing what she's writing. Because it is interesting. But when you start laying out I don't know, have you ever read Frances Burney? I'm not even sure I could tell you what a Frances Burney novel, what the flavor of one is. Maybe you should look that up real fast because that would be interesting. And she obviously, even though politics don't necessarily enter into her novels, she's culturally aware. Because like the Anne Radcliffe, well, that's interesting to mention is because it comes into play with Northanger Abbey, right? When she's making fun of these books. And she also is making fun of people who are too highbrow to read books.
Right.
Which book was that one in? Was that Mansfield Park? Where she has that whole essay kind of where she's tongue-in-cheek criticizing fiction, and then she kind of turns it on its head and criticizes those people who would be criticizing fiction.
It's either Mansfield Park or Northanger.
It's one of my
Abbey.
favorite things that she's done.
Yeah, it's great. We'll get back around to it one of these years.
And so, and the Napoleonic Wars are happening. So this is just a really rich part of history. And yet here she is, quiet little not Flannery O'Connor, good grief. Quiet little Jane Austen in her little country home, putting up with her nieces and nephews, being a good aunt from what her nephew wrote years later, and finding time throughout the day to write masterpieces because she's really good at observing. I mean, she would have had a social life. They moved around a bit as her father went from rectory to rectory. Then eventually he died and they fell in some hard times. And then the last part of her life would be she would just taken care of by one of those brothers who became an admiral, right? That's kind of a general gist of how
she was always, even though her brothers did move up and she was always going to be comfortable, I think I've definitely heard people say it is particularly poignant, Mr. Knightley's defense of Miss Bates, because that is the life that Jane Austen was kind of looking at, that she was always going to be
for like a couple years there, right
down.
after their father's death.
Yeah.
Things weren't going too well. And then their brother took care of them. And even then, I don't think things were like ever back to the point where they were with her father.
Right.
And so
her trajectory was definitely towards being more poor and less comfortable as she got older.
She was a spinster. She knew she wasn't going to get married at some point.
Yeah.
And it's not because this was by choice. There are reasons to believe, even though her family protected her by burning quite a few of the letters that would have revealed anything about it. And this guy, I forget his name. I was just listening to a podcast about him and I completely forgot his name, but he was a lawyer in the same town she was in at the time. They met at some balls because she had the life of one of her heroines from one of her novels. She would go to balls. She would meet people. They would have people over at their house. And so this guy became involved in her life, and most speculate that they fell in love, but that because of circumstances, he was pulled away from her and became an important judge in London later on in his life. But that
Who's
is
important now, sucker.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Apparently people called him like he was really boring later in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an interesting story to be told there. Like maybe he became sad and boring because of
who he
his loss.
Married or who he didn't marry.
Yeah. Anyways, and there are reasons to think there are reasons to speculate about all sorts of things. You also have like critics who speculate that she was a lesbian.
Sure.
Right.
Of course
And then I don't know, can I say this? There was a famous essay going around when I'm back in early grad school days, like they were decoding all the masturbation imagery in all the books, which is apparently just all over the place. You're just missing it, Nathan.
Sure.
So
the nice thing about modern academia is that it is basically word association games. And so if you find something that reminds you of something else, and it's a thing that you're interested in writing about, then you can just
find it there.
Find some fancy language to say, there's a thing in Jane Austen that reminds me of the thing that I'm interested in.
Yep.
And then you can just talk about the thing. I mean, even as old, I know I complain about this every Jane Austen episode, but that stupid Virginia Woolf essay.
Room of her own.
It's not, well, the essay is in a room of her own, although she does talk about Jane Austen. But there's another Jane Austen essay she wrote where she spends the whole time talking about the novels that she speculates Jane Austen would have written had she lived past 42, and saying, here are the seeds of everything that we see in Persuasion, the ways that she's changing. And wouldn't you know it, Jane Austen, if she'd lived, she would have written novels a lot more like the kind that Virginia Woolf liked and thought that she should have written. And so it's just complete speculation. And it's a famous, well-regarded essay, and it boggles my mind. Like it's
just dumb.
It's just dumb. It's just thought association. There's no argument there. It's just, hey, I bet if Jane Austen had lived, she'd be more like me.
Yeah.
How do you know?
She would have probably been a fan of Texas too, because her name was Austen.
Mm-hmm.
And so
the greatest city.
Mhm.
Yeah, so she probably would
Texas.
move to Texas and become a
Very progressive town.
Probably
so,
changed the spelling of her name even
Right.
Yeah.
to match.
Yep. Learn how to cook brisket.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Jane Austen, the city of Austin is like a progressive bastion and surrounded by conservative,
Oppressive conservatives.
oppressive conservative.
I mean, as Darcy says, keep it weird.
Mm-hmm.
So
Amen. That's why you don't marry Lord Borrington, the judge.
that's right. So yeah, other than these things, even though we have letters and we have books about her, so we know more about her than we know like about Shakespeare.
Mhm.
Like we know that she existed at least.
Right. I think she was really Francis Bacon.
Yeah, she was. Everybody was Francis Bacon. My parents got a pig,
Mhm.
and so I convinced them to name him. His name is Sir Francis Bacon.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was hoping that would be the connection and why you brought it up.
The only Francis Bacon worth remembering.
Have you eaten Francis Bacon?
No, they're not going to eat him.
Oh, he's just like a pet pig?
Yeah, he's funny.
Hey, why did you say that he's the only Francis Bacon person? I like Francis Bacon.
Those are fighting words,
That
Brandon.
was an unnecessary hot take. If you want to read early essays.
That wasn't even a hot take.
Yeah.
That was just me being cantankerous.
Yeah. Cantankerous. I like Francis Bacon's essays.
I like bacon.
You do?
Oh man, where were we?
1850.
I'm just kind of rambling now, but maybe it's mildly interesting rambling.
Yes. It beats Mrs.
That's
Bates.
what we pay for, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there we have it.
Mhm.
That's her. We don't know a whole lot about her, but we do get the feeling she's one of those rare authors that you feel that even though she has this style that she spearheaded of the free and direct, where she goes in and out of her characters' perceptions, right?
Sometimes you can't quite tell whether something's from Emma's perspective or from the authorial.
You do get the
Perspective.
sense that you know who Jane Austen is by just reading one novel.
Yeah.
And you get a sense of how it would have been to sit down and talk to her, the sort of observations she would have made, the sort of wit she would have had. There was one quote that I saw somewhere that she said it might have been in here. Yeah, Austen claimed not to write for such dull elves as have not a great deal of ingenuity themselves. A little poem that she wrote, apparently.
You got to be
Which is-
smart to read her books.
Yeah, in other words, to get all the nuances, because she likes to have wordplay and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that is all over the book. But there's also, there's a reason that they've got this undying quality to them, and that everything like Bridgerton and what's the other one that was famous for a while?
Not Downtown Abbey.
Yeah, no. All of these are trying to be Jane Austen, right? They're
Yeah.
all trying to do what she does, and failing miserably.
I don't think anyone's ever done it. I don't think anyone's ever come close.
No. And this was all, and it's just really funny watching, and we talk about this every time, but it's funny watching all the critics trip over themselves trying to find a way to justify that these books could have come from such a humble person.
Mm-hmm.
And we always end up back at the same place. It's, well, why do we have to think that craft has to come from like some mad genius in an attic, right? The mad woman in the attic, or the woman with a room of her own. It can come from just a cheerful, happy woman who was happy with her home life, was happy to play with her nieces and nephews, and when she could, find time to write in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
or early in the morning, whenever it was she wrote. There's just as much legitimacy to that outlook. That just so happens to be, though, a conservative Christian outlook
Sure.
on what creativity can look like, as opposed to the angst-ridden stuff that produces things like "It's the Passenger." Have we already?
Right.
Probably, yeah.
That we've had.
Like that thing, right?
Yeah.
And I would much rather have the healthy Jane Austen with a happy life who doesn't feel like she needs to go and make much of herself like a Charlotte Bronte, right?
Mhm.
And then produces these, right?
Yeah.
I would much rather have Jane Austen's producing Emma's than I would Charlotte Bronte's producing Jane Eyre's.
That's a superior work of art.
Yeah.
It's just, look, Jane Austen wasn't perfect. Read her letters, you'll see she's pretty prickly. She could be mean. You read her novels and you'll see she was pretty prickly and she could be mean.
Sure,
I'm sure she was irritated sometimes when she had to put away her papers to play with her stupid nieces and nephews. You can see that in these books. There's little things like, oh, the kids are here again.
She could probably make each one of us cry.
Yeah, probably.
She'd have something mean to say. I don't want to know
My
what.
feelings are hurt just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want.
Her assessment of your character.
Yeah. Nope.
Oh my
No thanks.
goodness.
Yeah, do you want to know who you would have become in one of her novels?
Not
Nope.
nightly.
Yeah,
I don't think.
How would she have decided to present you?
Don't want to know.
Yeah.
Too painful.
Yeah.
That's what the Judgment Day's for.
Jake's one of her rector characters. She always does so much for them.
Yeah, that's right.
There's one of them that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Mansfield Park.
Yeah, I guess the hero of Mansfield Park becomes a rector, right?
Yeah, it is interesting to wonder what kind of relationship she had with her dad.
I think she had a good relationship.
I think she did too. I think she just
A couple of her
had
brothers
met.
became rectors too.
Yeah. I think it's because living in that world, she got to meet
A bunch
all
of
the
posers.
varieties of rectors that there could possibly
Right.
be.
Well, she's
And
just
she had one that she thought was pretty hilarious and needed to be blown to the moon. And she proceeded to,
do it several times.
yeah.
Yeah. The man, wouldn't it be funny to see what she would do with the reformed world?
Painful.
It would be painful, but it would be so funny. Anyway, that's a little aside there.
Jane Austen. What a gal.
What a gal. I guess we should talk quickly about publication.
Sure.
So she started writing early versions of her stories in the late 1790s. Famously, you had Sensibility, which in its earliest stage was Marian and something, right?
Marian and Suzanne.
Marian and Susan. Yeah. And then you had Pride and Prejudice. Earliest instance was First Impressions. And then she would meet what's his face, the publisher who she would work with quite a bit, because eventually she would buy the rights back to her stories from him. Anyway, she met him, I think, through her brother. Her brother encouraged this, right? And she got Sense and Sensibility published. It was mildly popular. Pride and Prejudice was even more popular. And then then Northanger Abbey. Was that the one that came next? Or Mansfield Park? It was Mansfield Park.
No, Northanger Abbey and Persuasion were both published
that's right.
posthumously.
So Mansfield Park, and then Emma, it would be her bestseller. And it was also the one that she dedicated to the Prince Regent, because at that point he had become a fan. And she had been advised that she should dedicate it to him. Fairly good publication relationship with her publisher, but this one she chose to publish a little differently. She bought out the rights so that she could keep them, but in return for him printing and distributing the book for her, she gave him 10% of the profits. Never made her rich.
Mm-hmm.
And she was respected by the literary community, but they all the thing in the air at the time was the birth of Romanticism and all this. So all the professors were taken up by other things.
You see it even in Sir Walter Scott's praise of her.
Yeah.
He's like, her plots are so small, nothing
Exactly.
happens. Like, what is this book even about? And he's wrong. There's actually oodles of plot in any Jane Austen. There's reversals. There's
And so it would take
people who want things.
It would take a while for the world to come full circle and realize that she was as great as she was. Kind of like what happened with Shakespeare. I mean, it happened quite a bit. It takes a great literary scholar or a critic to really defend this person and show everybody, here's what you should be. This is why they should be in the canon and why you should be reading them. And she would always have her admirers. She never went completely out of print, but she wasn't as respected as she should have been at first. There's a guy named G.H. Lewis who wrote a series of essays praising her in the 1880s, and she still at that point hadn't completely had her moment. And so it would be in the early 1900s that she would come, and now she's a part of the canon. So
There you go.
Yep.
It could happen to you, folks.
good. 100 years, 200 years after you're dead.
Right. Well, what's that sound? It's the baggage plane flying over. I guess we already kind of said some of our baggage and that we're old, but what other baggage do you bring to this novel, Jacob?
Second time I've read this one. Read all of Austen's other novels at this point, and read Pride and Prejudice probably 3 or 4 times. And so I was really looking forward to, this is the second Austen novel I'd ever read. So I read Pride and Prejudice. And when I came to Emma, I hadn't built up quite as much trust for Austen yet. I had the opportunity to. And one of the bits of context that we didn't have is that Austen, about Emma and about writing Emma, said that she wanted to write a heroine that nobody could like except for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that very much from the beginning. The first time I read Emma, I just did not like Emma. And we kept living with Emma being somebody I didn't like for a really long time. And it got to the point where I was just like, does Austen really like this person? And she's not going to undergo or feel like she needs to undergo any kind of redemptive change, or is she having fun with her? Should I be mocking her? Should I am I supposed to like Emma and I don't, or am I not supposed to like Emma and it's funny? Like I had some difficulty, and I accepted at this point, especially on the second read, that was just my problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my first read of it back in the day. So I was really looking forward to coming to Emma with greater context on Austen and a greater understanding of the story and where it's going to go, and really be able to ask the question, because I know that you've wanted to make the case, or always tempted to make the case, and maybe
this is actually her masterpiece.
That this is actually her best. And so I wanted to be open to that this go around. So I came to it open to the idea that that you might be right, that this might actually be her masterpiece. If that's the case, that you actually like, you toy with it, and maybe part of you, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, seems like part of you really feels like that, and then part of you is like, well, I think that might be a little personal, and objectively, I guess I have to acknowledge Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
So I came prepared to, or at least open to that possibility. So that's sort of the way I approached this one.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember that. I remember even before we recorded our first batch of episodes on this, I remember just talking to you about it or texting, like watching you go through the whole process, the 5 stages of Emma, denial, acceptance, all that stuff. I just remember you being like, what is this? Because we'd had such a strong, fun time doing Pride and Prejudice, and I think you'd already read that twice.
I had, and
that was our first podcast,
maybe 3 times even, and I had loved that book from page 1.
Yeah,
like I just really like took to Pride and Prejudice like I hadn't taken to a book before it, and the only books I've taken to since on that level are Anna Karenina and War and Peace.
Right.
And those are my top 3. So I was hoping and expecting a similar kind of experience. And instead, we just spend so much time with, or at least from my perspective at the time, so much time with this unlikable sort of brat. That was just...
I remember you being actively irritated. I remember you texting me and saying, like, this book should be 5 chapters long. Mr. Knightley just needs to put her over her knee, or his knee, and that should be the end of it. And this is like, why am I being subjected to this? And you're not like an aggro, you're not always texting me like, why isn't the little lady in such and such a thing being put in her place?
Yeah.
But
why did we live so long?
Why are we
such
living
an
with
unlikable character? Yeah, it was very much my initial feeling.
And I also remember you thinking it took a while for this one to get going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I felt the same way. That's how I felt.
That's I guess
that read, I guess we'll get there
right
in a bit as to whether I felt.
Now you're like, it never got going. This
is the worst book I've ever read.
Yeah, is this the worst book you've ever read? What's your baggage, Brennan, for this time? And always?
Oh, I mean, my baggage is I'm coming to this now at the age of Knightley, and that changes everything.
Sure does.
Even my perception of where it stands in her.
Well, yeah, I guess it's worth me repeating, just to interrupt that. Yeah, I'm Knightley's age, and I have a daughter who's 13, the age that Emma fell in love with Knightley.
Yeah.
And so I've got both of those things going on.
The age that Knightley fell in love with Emma.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, it changes it. It makes it.
Well, every book changes as you age, but I think Austen, even apart from that dynamic, which we've already talked about, Austen changes a lot as you, because it's about young love. All the books in their way are about young love, and
except for Persuasion.
If you're waiting for that, that's one experience of reading the books. If you're experiencing that, that's one experience of reading the books. If you're past that, it's one experience of reading the books. If you're long past, if you're looking, if you see yourself as Elizabeth and Darcy, that's one thing. If you see yourself as Elizabeth's father, like if you're sort of paternalistically regarding the characters, it's just a much different experience. And I think we're all there now.
I mean, it'll be fun when we're the age of Mr. Bennett, when we're doing this in our 30s.
Maybe we'll start to resent Austen more as we become crotchety old people.
That's
I don't know whose number she has, but what other baggage do you have?
It'll be interesting to come back to Persuasion at our age.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to that.
Yeah. I mean, I read all these novels in my teens, I think, well before I even had a chance. And
I think this was, so as far as my baggage goes, I think this is one of the ones that I hadn't read before I saw the movie of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my view of the book was always
Gwyneth Paltrow.
And so it's a very different book than it is a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I should say, too, that if you're going to talk about movies infecting your reading of a book,
Yeah.
I definitely have Claire Danes as Emma and
Oh, yeah.
and Paul Rudd as George Knightley.
Not Claire Danes. Alicia Silverstone.
Oh, Alicia Silverstone. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. But yeah.
There is it Emma, the new one? They got the remake.
Yes, they just did one in 2020, I think, with
Yeah.
what's her face, the hotness of the moment, Anna Taylor-Joy.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it was not the novel, but a pretty fun movie if you could get yourself out of the novel's headspace.
Yeah, we saw it. It was funny.
Yeah.
It's not Emma, but
Yeah.
it's
It's a good
about
movie.
as good as Gwyneth Paltrow's.
Yeah. Probably more enjoyable than Gwyneth Paltrow's.
Yeah. The one thing that Gwyneth
But
Paltrow's version
not
get is
Alicia Silverstone's.
Miss Bates is pretty good in that movie.
So the reason Gwyneth Paltrow might win, even though who wants to give a prize to Gwyneth Paltrow, is because she does have the best badly done Emma speech by far. I actually watched a montage where somebody put together all three of them.
Yeah.
And
Jeremy Northam is pretty good.
well, he's the only one that actually feels like he has it in for her. The guy in the TV version is like real apologetic, and he's much younger. He's like almost age appropriate for her. And then the new guy, the Anna Taylor-Joy guy, he's fine. And then Rudd is pretty lame. That is the one failing of Clueless.
Yep.
Silverstone doesn't get a chance to quite do the redemption that the real Emma does. But hey, you can enjoy Clueless as a thing, and then you still have the novel Emma that you can enjoy as another thing. So,
which is how it should be done.
Which is how it to be done.
Yeah, but Mrs. Bates and the badly done scene from Paltrow is the winner.
Yeah,
sure.
Easy.
And since that's the scene that makes the book,
yeah, it is like
it's the scene that makes the movie, and
because they also found Miss Bates, the actress does a good job. She makes her kind of.
Oh yeah, you
can
almost
see
tear
how
up with
she's
her.
so pathetic and so
you
sweet.
could see how you would never want to be around this woman, but you would also never want anybody to be mean to her.
Yeah,
she's one of that.
Well, it's such a deft bit of writing on Jane Austen's part that you could. Emma's not being too mean. Like, you understand that she thinks she can get away with it. You've done things like that in your life. Maybe you've seen people do things and either get away with them or not. Like, it's just the perfect. She crosses a line, but it's a line that a lot of people would cross, and it's a very easy line to cross, and it doesn't.
Yeah, it's always funny. It can be funny when those things happen, and they're also very instructive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they form your character.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I've been there. I'm still able to put myself in Emma's shoes.
My son Elliot just got one of these moments. We were at a formal choir performance by his siblings, and Jack was up there performing, and Jack looked terrified, like he didn't want to be up there, like he wished he could be doing anything else. And so Elliot thought he would be supportive, and after it was all over, he yelled out, "Yeah, Jack!" And just the whole thing was just icy silence. Like nobody responded, nobody laughed, nobody did anything.
Yep.
Just like, yep, you just learned that there are different.
Yeah, you got to learn.
There are places that you don't do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I remember a situation. I was probably just 5 or 6, but it's like I just didn't understand that you put your hand over your heart for the Pledge of Allegiance.
You think you're having a heart attack?
Yeah, no, I was doing something stupid, and somebody was. I don't even want to talk about it. But any other baggage?
I mean, I don't know, man. Probably, but no.
Yeah.
I liked the movie, and then when we read it last, I was with Jake. It took a little while to get into it, but this, I'm not going to say yet what my reading.
Yeah, we'll get to big picture in a second. My baggage is that my second daughter was just born. Her name is Emma Joy. She is named after this novel. I love this character. I love pre-redeemed Emma even. Although having named my daughter, evaluating that way this time through, I was like, oh man, she is terrible. She is not very likable. But hey, it all works out. I mean, this is one of my favorite books. It always has been. I relate to it, not just, I mean, yes, this time coming to it, I was feeling more like a Mr. Knightley or something. I was looking at it from that vantage, and it was interesting. But also, I think one of the reasons I've always keyed into it so much is because, I've had my badly done moments where I'm Emma, and they've been helpful, and I like that just captures something about my life, about the way people have improved me. But then on the other hand, I think I can go ahead and say, and she won't mind, that I am about 10 years older than my wife. So if you go back and you listen to the Mansfield Park episode, number 4, I think it is, of that series, at the end, I'm like, hey guys, who should I marry? I think I'm going to marry a Fanny. And you guys are like, no, Elizabeth would be good. Why don't you marry an Elizabeth? And I'm like, I don't know, someone quiet and demure for me. That's what I'm into, which shows that I had about as much self-awareness as the average Jane Austen hero or heroine at the beginning of the novel.
Yeah.
Because, boy, I did not go for any of the demure ladies that I could have. But when Meredith came along, who was young and vibrant and talkative and argumentative and all that sort of stuff, she lit up my world, and I went for it. And
You dared with daring.
I dared with daring. I knew I was being daring, but I just couldn't live without her. So I went for it. And
She might have been Elizabeth. Maybe you were Darcy.
yeah, well, that was my pickup line. You can listen if you want to hear that story. I think I tell it on the Midnight Children episode because that book played in our romance. So you can hear the.
Surely you've told it on the latest Pride and Prejudice one too.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
I don't know. I tell it at length with all the details and stuff.
Whose love story doesn't include Midnight's Children?
Very few people. You always want, if you want a good love story, it's got to have Pride and Prejudice and Midnight's Children.
Yeah.
And me and my wife have a combative relationship. We like to spar. It's a lover's quarrel, as Chesterton says, but I don't think she'd mind me saying that. So there's a lot about Knightley in it. Without casting myself as Knightley or casting her as bratty as Emma, there's a lot that we can relate to and enjoy about this book. And we love Battle of the Sexes stories for that reason, and just get a big kick out of, we'll watch a movie or something and I'll be rooting for the guy and she'll be rooting for the gal. And it's romantic and it's fun. And
That's why you love Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
that's why I love, I'm rooting for Leatherface. She's rooting for Sally. Yes, I know the name of the heroine of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We all have a past except for George Knightley. So
You are better looking than Jeremy Northam, too.
yeah, obviously. And my wife's better looking than Gwyneth Paltrow. So yes, my life has mirrored this. I am not rich. I am not perfect. I am not a knight in shining armor, but there's a lot of stuff that's personal to me about this book. Enough so that my second daughter was named after it. So, although we don't call her Emma, we call her MJ. So,
After your second favorite story.
after my second favorite story,
Spider-Man.
Right. Combine my two favorite things. That's not true. I mean, I like Spider-Man. But
Best thing the Marvel Universe has going for it.
But I love MJ. That's not true. You made it creepy, Nathan. So I don't know what else to say. We're getting into big picture already. So, all right, here we go. We're entering into the big picture.
Here we are.
In the big picture.
In the big picture, we talk big picture thoughts from this reading, gentlemen.
Putting in our radio goggles like in Willy Wonka. That's what this room is like. It's big and white.
Yeah, we're getting Mike TV is going to be transformed into a stretchy out little dude or whatever, into a little guy that needs to be stretched out. That's what I meant to say.
Unexpectedly controversial take on Roald Dahl that we had.
We did, didn't we? Just like it.
Yeah, that's all that we had to do was like it.
Yep.
Roald Dahl's great. He hates humanity. He hates bratty kids. He hates fat, oppressive women. And
Apparently the Matilda
that's awesome.
Apparently
Yeah.
the Matilda musical is supposed to be pretty good. Have
yeah, I'm excited.
you guys watched it?
I don't think it's out anywhere, but I will watch it. And
Did
I
you guys
will
watch
enjoy
the
it.
weird Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio?
I've
No,
watched about
have you?
half of it.
It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. Yeah, I
Well,
think
if
I think I like it, but I'm not sure.
It's
Yeah.
good, but it's just strange.
My problem with it is Pinocchio. I'm not sure I like him very much, but
Yeah.
the
It's worth finishing.
Yeah.
But it's got the Guillermo del Toro strangeness to it.
yes, it certainly does. I'm glad to be watching it, but my wife tapped out. It was too creepy for her. So, and I said, "Badly done, Meredith," and she said, "I don't care."
And they
I'm
go
going
one
to
of
bed.
those, what's the movie where they hold his eyes open?
Oh, Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, you Clockwork Orange her.
Yeah, Clockwork Orange. I strapped her to a chair and I put a device that held her eyes open because that's what the Knightleys do to the Emmas
Yeah.
of the world.
Anyways, big picture.
Yeah. When I said extrapolate what you will, it's personal. What I meant was that my life is 50 Shades of Grey. I just want to make that clear to everybody.
That's what we all thought.
And the reason I enjoy this book is because I backread a bunch of creepy BDSM stuff into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
You have your own fanfic you've written about all this.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sure somebody's done it.
Oh boy.
But,
All right, we're supposed to be talking about
without imputing the novel, it is a novel that would invite somebody to do that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be surprising to me if whatever idiot wrote 50 Shades of Grey said they were inspired by Emma.
Wouldn't be surprising to me at all.
No, they were inspired by Twilight.
Yeah, I know that, but
Well, although not really, because my understanding of 50 Shades of Grey, I've not read it. I've not seen any of the movies, but isn't she like a mousy little thing? And he's like the guy that comes along and
I don't know.
yeah. I think that's more like the fantasy of
Figuring all this up for when we do 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, when we finally our 300th episode, we have it. No, I think that's more like nobody ever noticed me, and now big strong man comes along. Yes, there's a little bit of that. But Emma's a very noticeable lady. Whatever else you want to say about her? Big picture thoughts. Did you say them yet? Did anyone say anything?
I'll start. I came open to this being Austen's best novel, and am confirmed in my opinion that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Confirmed in my opinion that Pride and Prejudice is the best, at least so far. So I was not persuaded.
I see what you did there.
Thanks. That it's superior. In fact, I was persuaded that it is not superior. It's a great book, great novel, great fun, but doesn't pop start to finish the way Pride and Prejudice does.
Likes that.
You can say that it has better moments. You can say that the Badly Done scene has better moments. You can say that Knightley's better than Darcy. There are a lot of things that you can't argue, I think, but I think it's really hard to make the case that from start to finish in terms of story, propulsive narrative, plot, humor, side characters, everything all together, that it ends up being a better novel. So I'll go ahead and stake that, plant that flag, and we can argue about that later.
Would you agree with me that these are the two that belong in the conversation and nothing else that Austen wrote does?
Yeah, I think so. Although I want to approach each successive novel,
give it the same chance,
and give it the same chance to be in the conversation. But
I don't think any of them will make a case for themselves the way that.
The only one that would come close is Sense and Sensibility.
That's what a lot of people would say, although we famously, for whatever reason, maybe it was just how it was ordered with the other books we were doing. I think it came off of War and Peace. We didn't have as much fun with that one as I think I expected us to.
I think it's missing the central, interesting guy.
Yeah, Willoughby, he's great when he's played by Alan Rickman, but he's not.
You mean Brandon?
Yeah, Colonel Brandon. Sorry, Willoughby's the bad guy. Yeah, you don't really have a compelling male lead in that one that you get to spend any time with.
Yeah.
And what I thought you were going to say was that Mansfield Park is the other one, but that's just never. I mean, it's just not a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, as much as we enjoyed it, at least on first read, it can't really be part of the conversation for me.
You could say it's the deepest. You could say it has some of the most spiritually profound moments. You could say all kinds of things like that. But
the academic answer is Persuasion.
Yeah, well,
to all the academics.
Academics like Persuasion, and women who are 30 and missed the boat on something like Persuasion. And that's fine. I'm not knocking.
And that's probably because they all see themselves in that.
Well, yeah.
That's what you were saying.
That's what I was saying. But
they're all weird spinsters with their greyhounds.
Well, a lot of
in their office.
Yeah,
and
that's Brandon. You joke all you want, but what I was actually trying to say, but I didn't know how to say it in a way that wouldn't.
I'm talking
sound
about
insulting.
a particular professor at TCU that I have.
Okay, that's fine. You get her sick.
Bonnie Blackwell.
Yeah,
she's not listening.
In your face, more like Bonnie should be sacked from the university.
Yeah, no, she's fine.
Well,
I had good memories from TCU. It was a good school. Go Horned Frogs. Power of the Hypnotoad.
Woo. There are what's another word for spinster? There are godly older women who didn't end up getting married who really find something sweet and cathartic about Persuasion, and it helps them process their lives. And I don't begrudge them that any more than I begrudge someone who missed the boat on a great career, or so they feel, processing their life through It Happened a Wonderful Life, or It Happened a Wonderful Life. A Wonderful Life One Night. It's a Wonderful Life.
The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. But I think objectively speaking, Persuasion's not nearly the novel that I think there's three where she was at the height of her powers, and it's Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Mansfield Park. Like her writing is.
Since we are not women and we can't speak from the feminine perspective, I don't know if we have a right to say which one is the best.
I don't even know why we're podcasting.
Yeah.
How dare we? 1 star.
1 star.
I'm a woman.
For existing.
I say I'm a woman. I'm a trans woman.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we got cred now.
Yep. And I'm black.
Woo. Pronouns are.
We got even more cred.
Yep.
And they.
Call me. Nope. Not going to say a joke black lady name because that'll somehow cross the line.
Do not
Yep.
do that.
Don't call me Shaniqua or anything like that. Not going to do it. Not going to suggest it. All right. So where were we? Big picture. Jake said his big picture, which is it ain't Pride and Prejudice.
It ain't Pride and Prejudice. I think that I'm going to be. I mean, I feel like this is. We'll be litigating this when we get to Anna Karenina too, because I go back and forth. It's like, when you have an author of this, it's like Hamlet versus Lear or Hamlet versus The Tempest, right? It's like you have an author of this genius. It really gets difficult to say which is their best, right? Emma has its virtues. Pride and Prejudice has its virtues. I think in some ways Emma's more mature of a work. Which one would I rather read more? Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's coming down. I think as I'm getting older, I realize that that's fine. I don't have a whole lot of time to just read anything and everything anymore. Like when we did The Passenger, right? It's like I eventually have to come to terms with the fact that you don't have time to just, so then you regret having to give your time to The Passenger.
Right.
And so with Anna Karenina, I'm finding out I actually, as much nostalgia as I have for War and Peace, I would want to come back to Anna Karenina again. So I think that makes it the better work.
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice, I'd rather come back to it. So I think that makes it the better work. But I really enjoyed Emma.
Yeah. And I think you guys have fair opinions, and I hope you both die painfully.
They're both wrong.
No. I think you guys, represent the Democratic majority. Like, obviously, Pride and Prejudice wins. It's the superior page turner. I mean, there's just no question.
How do you like being in the minority about a book that you love by one of the great authors of history?
Why did you say that like you were the devil?
I don't know. As I'm swinging this whip.
Brennan's got like I don't even know what that is. It's like a piece of black plastic.
It's a bungee cord.
It's a bungee cord.
It's a bungee cord. It was in your office.
Yeah, I just don't know
It's
why.
your bungee cord.
Yeah, it's my bungee cord.
Like I'm a villain.
Yeah, a bungee cord
It
swinging
just puts
villain.
a smile on my face, Nathan.
That I'm in the minority?
Yeah.
I'm always in the minority.
I call it the War and Peace minority.
I'm the guy that didn't like the thing. I mean,
He's pretending he has a whip. You know, he had that whole Indiana Jones riff earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
Brandon
I just dropped it. I dropped it.
You dropped the whip?
I dropped the whip.
Yeah.
And also 50 Shades of Grey whip.
Yeah.
We're not cutting that.
No, we're not cutting that. But it's hard to come back from.
Sure is.
Hey.
Welcome to the Bookening.
Yes, I'm giving my big picture. I would say, as a work of construction, as a character study, there is a lot that I would say actually is superior to Pride and Prejudice. Like,
do you think that a book is a house, Nathan?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Let's just keep going.
Emma is a really fun novel to regard as an artifact. It is, oh man, if I have to stoop to this, then I'm not winning the argument, am I?
No, this is
Okay, Pride and Prejudice wins.
I'm kind of wondering what in the world's happening right now.
Emma is a perfect plot, and so is Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is the perfect plot with a broader cast of characters and a more fun cast of characters and a much less annoying, at least in the first half, heroine. So that's the argument for Pride and Prejudice. The argument for Emma is that it goes...
And the humor, too.
And the humor.
I think Pride and Prejudice is just funnier, start to finish.
Yeah.
I might disagree with you there. I think that's subjective. I mean, I think these are the two.
Of course it's subjective.
Yeah, you laughed. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the funniest stuff in Pride and Prejudice is the funniest stuff in Emma. What?
Oh, I was just, he said, of course it's subjective. And I said, pig.
Oh. Badly done, friend.
Sir Francis.
Yeah.
This one has, I think Knightley is better than Darcy, and that matters. Darcy feels a little bit more wish fulfillment-y and cardboard, and that's a knock against Pride and Prejudice. It's not really a knock. We're talking the difference between, is the Mona Lisa a better painting or is the Last Supper? But I would say the characters go a little deeper here. And I think this one has for me at least, and maybe this is purely subjective, but this one has a greater emotional punch. Like, it's got a real redemption at its center, as opposed to I should be a little less prejudiced. I mean, all her novels have someone repenting of something, but this has kind of a big repentance, and I like that, and I find it sweet, and I imagine a lot of other people do too.
There's an actual change.
Yeah, I mean, there is. Darcy and Elizabeth have to learn to not be proud or prejudiced, and it's big and it's emotionally cathartic, and it's not like that book lacks for.
It's kind of Darcy that does some of the changing in that one too.
Darcy does more
They
change.
both do. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So you like it only when the woman has to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That, like I said,
I see what.
Yep.
See.
this is the superior red pill novel, and that's really all
There's
I care
nothing
about.
wrong with me. It's all her,
Yeah.
Mm.
and I can make her into the woman I want her to
Yeah.
be.
I'm just
All I
gonna.
have to do is just groom her from the age of 13 and discipline her.
Yeah. But you don't have to. I met my wife when she was 20 something.
And look where you are.
Yeah. You can groom late.
Groomer's
It
gonna
is sweet.
groom.
Emma's change is really sweet.
Emma's change is really sweet. I find it very moving.
It's very endearing. And of course, you understand why you feel everything about Knightley's sort of like on the edge despair,
Mm.
not daring to hope. And then you watch the change, you watch the transformation, you watch him see it happen and sort of like, okay,
Hmm.
like, okay, I guess this is it. I guess this is the chance. I guess this is the shot. I guess
Hmm.
it's pretty great.
It's pretty great. And it's fun to joke about Nathan the Red Pill guy, but it's important to emphasize that I am putting you know how you can use empathy to identify with a character who's not exactly like you when you read a book?
No, can you explain?
Well, Jake, it turns
How
out
that
you can
works?
use one of the reasons you can read. One of the things that's fun about Jane Austen is you can actually put yourself in the shoes of a lady, even though you yourself not a lady.
I'm not really comfortable with that idea. It makes me
I
feel
don't
kind
know.
of like transy or something.
Yeah, I need some red meat, and I need to go hunt something right now, guys.
Yeah. This whole conversation is making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're
Hey,
right.
Excuse me while I use some of these pages from my book to light 10 cigars.
Wow.
Okay, so we're walking around in high heels.
Yeah, we're walking on. Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
What are you, a pretty lady?
I am. I've always thought I'm a lady. No, I have had moments in my life or a trajectory in my life where I was bad and not doing the right things, and then I changed, like I said earlier. And so I look at this from Emma's point of view, and I find her a figure of identification, and I find it sweet, her redemption in a way that's not just like, yeah, look at the little lady change for me.
Yeah.
It's,
No, yeah, you're right.
and I also get the added bonus of, yeah, look at the little lady change for me. Which that was the creepy version, but there is a good version of
No, that's
that.
a good version.
That every
Which we already dealt with that at the beginning of the episode.
yeah, but we didn't actually talk. We talked. Here's why it's not the negative thing, but so I've mentioned to multiple women. I don't remember who, but I've said, hey, we're doing like, what are you doing in the Bookening? I say Emma, and what do they always say?
What do you have to say about Emma?
No, what does if someone likes the works of Jane Austen and you bring up the subject of Emma, what's the next thing out of their mouth?
I hate Emma.
No. The next thing out of their mouth is badly done, Emma.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
everybody's.
That's everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody keys off of it. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Everybody finds it sweet and cathartic. And
Yeah, it's great. It's one of the great moments in literary history.
it's one of the great moments in literary history. It's something that husbands and wives and people that are in love appreciate because it's not that every man is disciplining every woman, but it does capture.
Well, sometimes it's vice versa.
Yeah. Sometimes it sure is.
Yeah.
But women do want a man who is not afraid to stand up to them
And
Yeah.
say no.
and say no.
That's right.
Well, every woman tests this with her man because what she knows intuitively is the man who won't stand up to her won't stand up for her. And so this is part of the dance of romance in and of itself. And it's why it's so romantic and why it can be easily perverted in a culture without real discipline and real manliness into things like 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
But the reality is men are made to protect their women. And in order to feel safe, the man has to feel a little bit dangerous, but not toward her, but also toward her. He has to be able to stand up to her. If he's able to stand up to her, then he's the kind of man who might stand up for her, right? But if she can walk all over him, well, then he's not the kind of man that can protect her. She has to protect herself.
Yeah.
Right. But if he'll step in and protect her from herself, then she can trust him to protect her. And that's part of the romance of it all and the beauty of it all. That's at the heart of what really works about the story.
This is arguably the great novel about that dynamic, which is a healthy and good dynamic and not something, it's something that our culture is so queasy about and has so little experience of that we can't help but hypersexualize it.
Well, you turn it into John Wayne flipping Maureen O'Hara over his leg.
Right. Or worse.
I
mean, that's the
or
nice
50 Shades of Grey.
That's the nice version of what people 40 years ago turned it into. But
yeah,
now it just goes into real nasty pornographic, it's like people don't have any conception of this stuff. And so you have a whole generation of women who actually long for a man who will discipline them, but they don't have any healthy idea of what that might feel like or look like. And so they just find it in these perverse places.
Well, then everything too that we do is now filtered through the lens of power and control, right? So every narrative is a narrative of power and control, and so, or dominance and submission. And so, of course, that filters into everything that we think about sex and sexuality. There's always going to be that sort of correction too, where we try over here to suppress nature, it's going to pop up somewhere else, but in a more perverted way. You can't actually suppress nature. What you can do is discipline it according to God's law. But that means acknowledging nature according to God's law.
Yeah.
And so you come to Emma now in today's culture, and there is something very refreshing about a book that just feels no shame about saying, here is the story of a young woman whose dad is lame and permissive and lets her do whatever she wants. And she's got a lot of really fine natural qualities, but she's just kind of a brat. And she falls in love with the one man who's willing to discipline her, who's willing to stand up to her. And there's nothing perverse or controlling or whatever you want to say about it.
What she finds is somebody who can improve her and protect her at the same time.
Yeah. And
that's super sexy to her.
And
it's something that she can't find in some dope like Frank Churchill.
Right.
He's just going to laugh along with her.
Yeah, he's going to sort of continue to enable her, and she's going to find that on the one hand, she's kind of attracted to him, but on the other hand, he's really missing something that she knows she needs, and she can't quite put her finger on it. So, but she's never really been in love before, does she? What's actually going on here?
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, the big brother figure in her life just puts her in her place, and it's like, oh, well, that's what I've always needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've never had. That's what will keep me safe. That's what will help me grow. That's what I can trust. That's what I respect. Therefore, that's what I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's deeply romantic. And the scene where, not the badly done scene, but right after it, where she goes and sees Mr. Bates, and then she comes back, and Mr. Knightley just happens to be visiting her father or something like that before he goes on some trip, and they run into each other. And her father's like, "Good job, you went to Mr. Bates," and Mr. Knightley sees that she's received his correction, and she's happy and he's happy, and they're both but they can't really say anything. It's a really romantic scene, very sweet, very moving, very romantic, sexually charged in a way that's not perverse, but just this is what actual human sexuality is when it's not corrupt. So yeah, there's a million ways to talk about how our culture perverts this, and the ways that a young aggro incel dude could take this novel and pervert it in his head or use it as an excuse to do something perverse. But
yeah,
it's a good story about healthy sexuality.
It's relational. He's just willing to tell her and discipline her. And he's not there's this weird, I don't get on Facebook much, but there's this now new weird trend with some of the reform guys and these incel guys that it's the anti-dad bod.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of thing where they all think that they have to be buff. And have you seen
that's just all of the I know that thing exists. I've not seen a lot of it, but a lot of that. So if you are actually paying attention to the culture, what you understand is that there are a ton of kids, and this is all downstream. okay, this is a part of the effeminization of our culture. And these guys are swept up in it, and they don't even know that that's what's going on. But part of what you have, like, there is an epidemic of young men in their teens who are on gear, steroids.
Yeah.
Right. And all of this, and this is like just a huge increasing trend. And it's a huge increasing trend that's downstream of the superhero movement and all these guys going on steroids, which, if you don't know, if you're not clued in, it doesn't matter how much of a natural phenomenon Dwayne Johnson is, or Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Evans, or any number of other, whoever, pick your poison, Hugh Jackman. These guys, you don't have epic, Chris Pratt, for goodness sake. You don't have epic 6-month transformations of dropping 50 pounds of fat and putting on 50 pounds of muscle all at once without drugs. And that's what these guys have done. And you don't get to be pushing up on 50 and being the biggest and leanest of your life without being on steroids, Dwayne Johnson. Okay. So you have these guys who, they have all these designer drugs that they're using, and they create a standard of size and beauty that a whole bunch of guys are responding to, because it's the opposite of their fat couch potato body, video game body that they grew up with, or that they see in their dad. But it's all interwoven and interconnected. And it is true that we have a responsibility to take care of our bodies and to be men, and as masculine men to have actual physical strength and to do things that facilitate that. And it's also true that there are things that we have to do if we're going to have office jobs and things like that to compensate for that, right? Like, not everybody lives on a family farm and can go out and chop wood or whatever it is, right? So going to the gym is a great thing for a whole lot of people. I'm for it. I do it myself. I'm in the best shape I've been in 10, 15 years. That doesn't matter. The idea that you have to live at 10% body fat and be jacked out of your mind is stupid.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing.
In vain.
People want to be submissive as women, or want submission in their women, and they don't see any examples of it, and they don't know how to do it, and then they end up doing these cartoonish, perverse versions of it. It's just the same thing, and people feel the desire to actually have some strength. They look around and they see wimpy, effeminized men. Maybe their dad was that way, and
I don't want anybody to not look around and say, "Hey, this is an effeminate culture. This was my dad. This is myself. I need to repent of that, and I need to hit the gym and be motivated and get strong and drop some fat and deal with myself." Great, do that. But don't be obsessive to the point of vanity about it. Mm-hmm. Just take steps to be healthy and strong.
Yeah, or
get your life in order. That's okay. That's good. But the extreme cartoonish version of it is not okay. If it's to the point where you are in your early teens or 20s and you think that, well, what this means is I need to be shooting trend, like you've got a much bigger problem. And it's so connected to vanity. This is not masculinity. It's effeminacy, right? To be shooting up steroids in your teens or 20, well, at any age, right? There's a time for testosterone replacement therapy, maybe post 40 or something like that, potentially. But that's a different question for you and your doctor.
Well, so many of these perversions are just born out of such deep effeminate insecurity.
Yeah.
Like, Mr. Knightley doesn't actually need to spank Emma, nor would that even occur to him, because he knows he can do it with a paragraph, with a sentence. Like, he's not
with the line.
He's not worried about it.
Done.
He could, he could give her speech. It wouldn't occur to him to do anything else because he's just a dude,
right?
And that's what's nice